So I feel a little dumb or weird making this video. Maybe a little bit silly, if that's the right word. Just because I don't want people to interpret me as coming into this with, I don't want to seem as if I'm coming into this with ego or pride. Especially considering, I mean, if you look at my numbers, the numbers don't lie. I have less than 10 subscribers. Like, probably literally no one cares what I do, to be honest. But having a platform online, as small as it is, even if mine is just like a little tiny rung on a ladder or a little step stool that I get on, like, hey, listen to me. Even if nobody really cares, I still care about the content that I create and the messages that I put out into the world, even if no one listens to them. So if anything, this video was important for me. I hope it will be helpful to anyone else who watches. I hope it can be a good resource, but if anything, it's just for me to make clear where I stand on current goings on. So I wanted to make this video also sort of as a way to explain where I've been lately. I haven't uploaded in a while. I had another video that I filmed before this. I still haven't edited it, and I was planning on it going up before my next video, but I do think this video that I'm filming right now it has to be the next video that I upload, because I want to make sure that my next response on social media is addressing the current situation. So the reason why I haven't been posting, I kind of took a step back from all social media, really, except for my private accounts, because of the current events in the United States where I live. I mostly spent most of my free time during the past week or so doing a lot of research on the history of events that have led up to this current crisis that we're facing, namely the relationship of the Black community and law enforcement. Of course, this is all in response to what happened to Mr. Floyd, the unjust killing of Mr. Floyd by Minneapolis PD police. And I just want to make it clear, my opinion, where I stand, and I don't think it's opinion, it's just, it is what it is. Black Lives Matter. And there's no qualifying statement to that. People have to understand that if you respond to that with all lives matter, that statement in and of itself is a really good, like, on paper, all lives matter. Yes, that sounds great. That is true, because it is. I really, in the core of my being, believe that no one is better than any other person. Even if I think we're all created equally, and as a religious person, yes, I am religious. As a Christian, I believe we are equally loved by God. But that is not the world that we live in. That is not the world that we have created. So when you respond to someone saying all lives matter, you're ignoring the context of the world that we're living in. You have to understand that Black Lives Matter is a movement by the Black community, for the Black community, about issues within the Black community. And then stepping up to say that they matter shouldn't even be such a radical statement. But to respond by saying all lives matter is basically an attempt to shut down the conversation and an attempt to dismiss the issue. So I'll say it again. Black Lives Matter. growing up in the South, I live in Arkansas. We globally don't have the best reputation for our history with race relations and all of a lot. It is deserved, but I would say growing up, especially as a small child, I didn't know about the problem. I was very isolated from the problems that we had. But luckily, I live in a part of Arkansas that is pretty diverse, actually, compared to other places here. And as I got older, and I would say my elementary school was very white, like we had one black kid in my grade. But growing on to middle school and later on high school, our populations were way more diverse. And I'm really glad that I got that exposure to people who are different from me at a young age. I think that's crucial to battling prejudice, is by having experience and relationships with people that are different from you. So I want to acknowledge that I don't want to be a racist. And I grew up being taught, the Sunday school song, Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world, red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in his sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. And so, growing up, I think, oh, there's no problem, nothing matters, we're all loved, we love each other, everybody love everybody. But, growing up, I've seen with my own eyes that that's not how everybody feels. So I think, for me, education is something that I value a lot, and it's something very important to me. And it's through education that I feel like I have grown and my horizons have broadened, and I've been exposed to different people. I've had the opportunity to create relationships with people who are different from me. And I feel like that's the best way to combat racism, because I feel all prejudices and all, racism is rooted in fear and ignorance. And the best way to fight ignorance is with education. So, again, I know I have a lot of work to do myself. I'm still in the process of unlearning racism and keeping it in check within myself. But I hope that this video can serve some purpose other than me just rambling about myself and my feelings. So I do want to talk about a few resources that have been helpful to me in unlearning all of these hateful ideologies and feelings. So, normally I talk about books. This is like my attempt at a booktube channel. That's kind of what this is supposed to be. But I guess I am kind of straying from, I don't think it's straying from the topic at all, actually. I know a lot of people get really up in arms if you try to talk about politics, as if only politicians can talk about politics, as if you need a certain education to have an opinion and express it. But I think that every citizen has a right to talk about politics, and anyone who tries to shut that down is doing a disservice to our democracy. And if you presume to care about people, I don't know how you can say that you don't care about politics. And even the books that you choose to read, that in itself is a very political decision, because if you're a citizen of a country, of a society, and you refuse to ignore, or you choose to ignore the relevant issues and decide. I could be learning about things that make my community and my city, my country, a better place, but instead I'm going to read about all these other things. Like, if you exist in a society, you are participating in some form of politics, whether you like it or not. So even choosing not to care about politics is a political decision. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. But since I primarily talk about books, I want to share a lot of books that I've read recently that have helped me confront the issues of racism and start unlearning racism, and help me to understand the experience of a Black person in America. First, I want to recommend some African literature, and I'll put this disclaimer right away. I really don't know a lot about Africa, the continent itself. I don't know all of the countries within it. I've never been there. But I did take a course in college on African literature, and I remember, this may not have even been in that class, but I remember writing a journal, which is basically an essay that we had weekly assignments to do, and I wrote something about how I rarely read books about people that aren't like me, like books without a female protagonist, or because like I tend to put myself in the place of the protagonist, which I think that's what a lot of people do. And you're supposed to relate to the protagonist because you're supposed to care about them and care about what happens to them. But I wrote something about how I typically like avoid books that I feel like I can't relate to, like about men, like, because I'm not a man, I don't know what that is. And my professor was really gracious and probably a lot gentler with me than he should have been, but I think he didn't even like go on a full rant or anything. He just like marked to the side, why is that? Like, that's not true. And it made me think, I don't know why I do that. That is stupid. Like, just because the book is about a boy doesn't mean I can't understand it, or because it's about someone of a different race or, you know, a different background. Like, that's, like, I would read British books all the time, and I'm not, well, I wasn't born in England. I supposedly have English ancestry, but who cares? Like, that. So I just realized just how stupid that was of me. And so I'm grateful to have taken this class, and it broadened my horizons to, you know, literature from other parts of the world. But this was years ago, so honestly I'm not going to speak about what these books are about, because like they all kind of blurred together. We had to read them so fast so we could get them all, and like college is just like wild. Well, it wasn't that wild, to be honest, for me, but it's so much work, so much pressure. It's a crazy time. So the works of African literature that I want to share are A Bend in the River by V.S. Naipual, Era of God by Chinua Achebe, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born by Armah, and Nervous Conditions by Tsitsi Dangarembga. And that Nervous Conditions is the one that I do remember enjoying the most. I also remember enjoying parts of The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born. Like, there's scenes that I still remember from that book that stick out to me. So yeah, I'm going to throw those in just for anyone who may be interested in African literature. And this is definitely a reminder on myself that I need to diversify my reading more. Some books that are nonfiction that have really helped me to learn more about the hard facts of these issues include Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. This isn't, hard science nonfiction, but it is a memoir about Bryan and his life as a criminal defense lawyer. He represented people on death row, and it's really it's more than just one particular case. There has been a movie made on it, which I recommend the movie as well, but I'm trying to talk about books right now. But it's kind of focuses on a particular case, but it's really about death row in general, and the book goes into a lot of different cases and just the consequences that death row has. Another nonfiction book I want to recommend is So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijeoma Oluo. It's just about a book about talking about race and why it's so hard for us, but like how we can get over it. Ijeoma is also a mixed race person, and so she offers the perspective of the complexity of that and how growing up that way influenced how she views race. But it was very interesting and I recommend it. Another one is When Affirmative Action Was Right by Ira Katznelson. This is a book about affirmative action and responses to a lot of the arguments against it. And Katznelson takes a historical perspective and examines, the history of social programs put into place to help others, and argues that we should do the same to help rectify racial injustice. I also want to recommend When They Call You a Terrorist by Patrice Khan-Cullors and Asha Bandele. Both of these ladies are founders, I think, or at least members of the Black Lives Matter movement. And it's just about their experiences growing up. It's more about their lives than the Black Lives Matter movement, because I remember reading it and wanting to know a little bit more about the organization itself, but this is more about their lives. But it still is a very valid resource in explaining what it's like to grow up Black and what it's like to encounter the justice system as a Black person. Another nonfiction I want to share that I've read recently is She Came to Slay by Erica Armstrong Dunbar. This book is a biography of Harriet Tubman. We all know her for her work in the Underground Railroad, but this book is just explains more about her, that she was more than that. It just tells the story of her very interesting, very eventful life. I have a few more comedic nonfiction choices that I want to recommend. So these are more lighthearted, and because both of these women that write, these authors, are very funny people just to begin with, but as Black women writing about their own lives, of course they've encountered racism, and of course their race has affected how it affects how other people see them and how the world interacts with them. So of course that's part of their story. So of course these issues are going to be present in their memoir, but it's not just about race issues. And I think it's important for people who are not Black or not of color to realize that people of color don't want to talk about race all the time either. So these are just some more lighthearted options which I'm sure a lot of people right now would appreciate, because things are so dark in the real world anyway. So the first one I want to mention is Don't Touch My Hair by Phoebe Robinson. Phoebe Robinson is very funny. She's been in a lot of things right now, and she's had a lot of commercial success. I know she's part of the podcast Two Dope Queens. I think she's done a lot of work with Comedy Central. She's just been in a lot. She's just very funny. But her memoir is Don't Touch My Hair, and it's about her life growing up. Another author I want to recommend is Samantha Irby. I believe she started as a blogger or just writing online and just writing essays, and so a lot of her books are compilations of essays, and I read two of her books that I really enjoyed. One is called Needy, and the other is We Are Never Meeting in Real Life. And I loved both of them. She is just so funny, and she's kind of a bit of a misanthrope like me. Like, she hates people, and she talks about how, like, the modern experience of just interacting with people, how awful it is, which I relate to. She talks about her cats. There's just a lot of funny stories, but of course she mentions a lot of the struggles she's had, growing up black, growing up poor, being disadvantaged. Her parents were older when they had her, and they had a lot of health issues, so dealing with the healthcare system as a black person, she has a lot to say, a lot of perspective to give in that respect. So I do want to share a few more fiction titles, because it's not, like I said, it doesn't have to be about race all the time. Black people deserve to tell stories that don't have any ugly racism in it. They deserve stories with positive representation and happy endings too. So here, I know I can do better about this too. I can read more stories by black authors, but it's something I'm trying to do better on. So here's a few things that I've read personally. This first one is a work of YA fantasy. It's Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. This is super popular. I probably don't have to say much about it because I'm sure many of you have heard about it. It's a YA fantasy inspired by, I think it's West African folklore. Editing self, please correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, it was just really refreshing for me to see a fantasy told with that kind of folklore. I'm a big folklore nerd, but I will admit a lot of the stuff I've read comes from a Western, like Eurocentric kind of world building, but it was really refreshing to get out of that for a change. Another work of fiction is The Changeling by Victor LaValle. Victor LaValle is a fantasy author. He has kind of a magical realism style, at least in The Changeling. This is the only work I've read by him, but I know he's a popular author in fantasy. He has a lot of other books as well. But The Changeling was really, really good. Like I said, it's magical realism, which is one of my favorite types of writing, but it's about the title, about this man who, he has some issues with his father. His father leaves when he's very young, and it's under very mysterious circumstances, and he's not really sure what happened to him. And supposedly he had disappeared for a while himself as a baby, but then he moves on, life goes on, he grows up, and he meets a woman, and they have a child, and his wife becomes convinced that their child is not their actual child. So hence the title, The Changeling. And it was just so good. He is such a talented writer, and it just was a wild adventure. Well, may not classify as adventure, but it was a very exciting story. And I really enjoyed it, and I recommend it for other fantasy fans or fans of magical realism. Another fiction writer that I really enjoy is Helen Oyeyemi. I read her short story collection, What Is Not Yours Is Not Yours. And she has that very surreal writing style that I really enjoy. I remember trying to read one of her earlier books, White is for Witching, when I was in high school, and it was just, I was 17 or something, and it had a very unconventional writing style, and I found that I couldn't really get through it at the time, and it was a library book, so I just returned it because I wasn't getting on with it. But I would like to revisit it again soon, and a lot of her other works, because she has a very, just the themes that she addresses are very up my alley. The last fiction book I want to mention is one that I tried to read years back, and I believe I heard about it from BookTube. I want to say Jen Campbell did a video about it, and she really sold it and made me want to read it. and I checked it out from the library. It's called Ruby by Cynthia Bond. It was very dark, and I knew that going into it, but I wanted to read it anyway. But I just found myself like dreading picking it up, and like, because I was about halfway through probably. I just had a feeling it was gonna get so much worse, and I didn't know if I could handle it. But I think also part of it, like being a library book, I just felt I couldn't really get through it in time, so I ended up returning it and not finishing it, which upon reflecting, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should have pushed through it. Maybe I shouldn't shy away from stories that are uncomfortable, because I have the privilege to just read about it, while a lot of people have to face that every day. So that's something I'm going to try to be more conscious of in my reading choices in the future. And yeah, I would like to go back to Ruby one day, because I have heard that it's excellent, and I'm sure it's very well written, and hopefully I will have the, the stamina to push through. So I'll try to also throw in some links of other resources that have helped me in my unlearning process. I think we have to, by we, I'm saying white people, because a lot of times when I sit down and make these videos, I kind of picture someone who is like me. I guess that's my target audience or whatever. I would love it if people who are not like me watch this. I would be very flattered by that. But, speaking to other white people, I think it's our responsibility to... I think it's on us to take responsibility for our own education of the issues and our own response. It's not a person of color's job to explain to you everything. They are not your teacher. They're not getting paid to do that. So yeah, we all have to be responsible for ourselves. Yeah, I do encourage you to check out the links. I know there's a lot of stuff being shared right now, which is probably the one silver lining in all this, is that so many people are speaking out, and there's a lot of free resources right now. I know the movie Just Mercy, I talked about the book earlier, the movie is available for free to rent. I forget if that's everywhere, if it's just on Amazon, but I'll make sure. The book Stamped from the Beginning is free on Spotify to listen to. I just downloaded a free book. What was it called? Did I write it down? I'll have to edit that in. And I'm looking forward to going through those resources. I know JSTOR, the research website, has been sharing or compiled a sort of syllabus for about institutionalized racism, and that's going to be a kind of sort of summer syllabus, like for myself and my unlearning racism, something I can be reading in my free time in the summer. So I'll link all kinds of stuff that I can try to find that would maybe be helpful. Also, I would encourage you to check out this is not related to BookTube, but this is a channel that has been helpful for me, that I discovered within the last year or so. Her name is T, and her channel name is Nappy Headed Jojoba. And I know that may be a name that kind of makes you think, ugh, but it was in response to the news story where I forget if he was a politician or if he was just like a talking head on the radio or whoever he was, but some man called a bunch of basketball players nappy-headed. I'm not going to say that word on the channel, but from nappy-headed jojoba, you can kind of get what he said. But she made the channel name in response to that. She used to talk about a lot of beauty topics, and specifically hair care. As a Black woman, she would talk about hair care ish like stuff, but lately she's gotten more vocal about her politics and just, yeah, her experience as a Black woman. And she's been doing lives every Saturday night during quarantine. I think she calls them Saturday Night Lives. But I really like her. I like hearing her take on things. And she's been another resource for me that has been, you know, really has opened my eyes to things. So I want to recommend her as well. So I'll close. This has been so long. I just want to say thanks for watching. I hope that you are staying well, staying safe. I hope that you will be involved locally with whatever's going on in your specific community. Yeah. Take care. Love your neighbor. Bye.